Hi, everyone, and welcome to OnPay's webinar, Beyond Accounting, What Your SMB Clients Need from You Right Now. I imagine that you've all been fielding calls left and right since April from clients. Definitely a busy time to say the least. We're here to share some insights on what's on the mind of small business owners at the moment and what your firm can do to ensure you're there to help. We're very excited to have you join us today, but before we get started, let's introduce your presenters. Good to have know the person behind the voice. My name is Rajapakse, and I help accountants have the best experience possible with us so they can focus on serving their clients. I work as a product specialist on the partner development team, and I previously did the prior wage entry, data migration, and overall setup of OnPay accounts.
And hi, everybody. Thank you, Kara. And thanks to everyone for joining us. My name is Elliott Brown, and I lead the marketing team at OnPay. We've been working with and marketing to small business owners for a long time. So I'm really excited to share some of the things we've learned. And especially, we've just pulled together some new market research this week. This is actually a sneak preview because we're releasing it tomorrow. So you heard it here first. Also, if there are any questions along the way, feel free to ask them in the chat box. We'll try to stop a few times to answer questions along the way. And if we don't get to any questions or something is really super specific, we will follow up with an email after the webinar is over.
And Elliott, I'm really excited too because I see that we're already in the questions panel getting some questions and also a few shout outs from places as diverse as California, North Carolina, Puerto Rico, India. So glad to see attendees from all across the country and all across the world.
Yeah, and please don't be shy about reaching out in the question box because yeah, that's what we're here for, is to share everything we know. So please do.
Absolutely. And for those of you that aren't familiar with us, we here at OnPay offer payroll, HR, and benefits for businesses of all sizes and industries. We have best-in-class integrations with top software like QuickBooks, Xero, whole slew of others that make us robust and flexible, and a really good option for accountants and their clients. And we also offer free payroll for accounting partners, even if you don't have any clients on OnPay. So big win there. And we are covering quite a bit today. We know this may prompt questions, so send those questions our way, but we'll start with a look at results from a recent survey we conducted about small businesses and what's on their mind. We'll then discuss challenges businesses are facing due to COVID-19 and the different resources available to them to address these challenges head on.
We're also seeing right now that accountants are becoming more and more important to their clients. So we're going to go over how they expect you to help right now and how to approach potentially adding new services to your practice, and how to make sure it all fits with your skills and bandwidth. And finally, we're going to share our advice on how to present any new services you do want to offer clients to get them on board and just kind of bring it to market effectively on your side. But before we do get started, one quick note to go over. Please keep in mind that every business is different, and a webinar is no substitute for independent research or getting formal legal or business advice if you need it. We've done everything we can to make this super helpful, but we recommend that you verify anything you have a question about, and we'll also share some resources at the end that may be helpful to review. So don't feel too much like you have to take notes. We will we'll follow up with everything we've said today. And with that said, let's move on and jump in. Let's see. So we, like Kara was mentioning, we grew from a traditional payroll service that's been in business for about 30 years. So we've learned quite a few things from small businesses along the way, but we also have a lot of questions about what they're going through right now and what makes them tick. So we have gotten in the practice of running kind of market research surveys where we go out and reach out to 1,000+ small business owners to really understand what's going on with them, and it's been really interesting for us to try and understand what their relationship is with their accountant. And so kind of in the survey we ran last year, we'll get into the new stuff in a second here, but in the survey we ran last year, we saw some really interesting things just about their relationships with you. Number one is that accountants and bookkeepers are small business owners' most trusted advisor. And that's not just for accounting or financial help, it's for a range of business decisions and opinions. So they trust you more more than lawyers, bankers, friends and families. They really kind of come to their accountants first when they have a big question, generally. So first of all, pat yourself on the back for doing a good job and building that trust. And know that, you know, with the great responsibility, or I'm sorry, know that there is great responsibility, and they expect a lot from you. Looking at what they do expect specifically, 61% of small business owners are totally satisfied with the range of service they receive, and that's a pretty good number. I think a lot of them are getting what they want, and I'm sure a much larger number, like view you in a positive light. But there are some opportunities too, and I think that's the third thing we saw, is that many business owners expect more services from you, from payroll, to accounts payable, accounts receivable, to kind of like softer or more strategic services like business advising, or being like a sort of CFO for hire. There are a lot of things that they really do expect your help with, or at least that a lot of small business owners do. And so that was really what we saw as kind of the status quo and the relationship between small businesses and accountants coming into this year.
Yep, and it's definitely an understatement, I'll say, to say that things have changed in 2019 or 2020. We recently conducted a new survey to include questions to see how COVID-19 in particular has affected employee and employer sentiments. To really get into the nitty-gritty, we surveyed 1,058 managers and owners of US-based small businesses. These businesses, they had fewer than 500 employees. And we also surveyed 1,015 employees of these small businesses. So Elliott, go ahead and reveal, what did we find?
I'm so excited. This is the debut of this information. You've seen it here first. But the biggest thing we saw, and I think it's like a really positive takeaway right now, is that small business owners are pretty optimistic about where things are headed. And just as a quick aside, I think something we knew before is that small business owners are optimists in general, right? You have to have a lot of faith in yourself and a lot of belief to think, I'm gonna just buck the trend and start my own thing. And I believe, in myself and my idea, and I'm gonna just base my livelihood and my family's livelihood on, my good ideas and my hard work and my ingenuity. So that's kind of where small business owners come to begin with. But we kind of see that, that attitude reflected really in how they're viewing things right now and what their outlook is. 43% of small business owners expect their revenue to increase in 2020. Like that's awesome. And there's been so much going on that that is really, I think we were a little surprised to see how positive their outlook was in that regard. And also 62% think things will be back to normal by the end of the year, which is also, it's not everyone. The glass, it's definitely a glass slightly more than half full perspective, but that they, do think like, hey, like, this is going to be, it's a hard time right now, but it's going to be a speed bump, and we're going to be able to come back. So, so that's kind of what we see on the bright side.
Yeah, really good. Definitely unexpected, but very nice to see, I thought.
No, for sure, for sure. And some of those numbers, they're that aren't all 100% rosy. I think behind that optimism, there is a little bit of uncertainty right now. One thing we see for sure is diminished expectations a little bit. Like that 43% of folks expecting an increase in revenue is awesome, but that is down from 69% who expected an increase last year. So expectations definitely aren't where they were, and that's not a surprise. But that's a notable shift. Like almost more than a third have kind of don't think they're going to be where they were. Another thing is their layoffs and furloughs. Small business owners are definitely taking steps to to make sure that their number of employees and the way they're staffed fits with their business. The average average small business has laid off 27% of its staff, or furloughed 27% of its staff, and over 50% of the employees of small businesses report that either that they or their coworkers have either lost a job or lost wages due to COVID-19. So they're definitely taking a hit in that regard.
And we're also seeing a lot of these same businesses cutting back on cost overall. 50% have paused hiring entirely, and over 35% have halted any wage increases. 15% have cut back on benefits. And what we've also found is that businesses with more employees are less likely to feel affected by COVID-19 than you've got your smaller businesses. On average, 1 to 5 employees, they're really the most vulnerable at this time.
No, and and that's definitely a concern, that the small businesses are probably most afraid. And also just want to call out here that the employers aren't alone in their feeling of uncertainty. From talking to small business employees, we also see that a lot of them are concerned about the possibility of losing their jobs within the next 6 months. And I think, when you take all these things together, the overall takeaway is that there's a lot of stress right now for small business owners, and they're keeping their smiley face on and staying optimistic, but nobody really knows what's going to happen. There are a lot of new challenges for them, and they're trying to take care of their teams, they're trying to keep their business afloat, and they're also trying to figure out how to take advantage of a range of complicated governmental relief programs. And that's one of the places that we saw accountants have really made a big difference. On the next slide, yes, thanks. So I think what we're seeing is, that accountants are more important forever. You're already their most trusted advisor. And while only 30% of small business owners actually use an external accountant, half say you were important for getting economic relief, and a large majority of small business owners with accountants relied on them for help with those relief programs, which is huge.
And businesses that are not using an external accountant, they haven't done as well. They're less likely to expect an increase in revenue, expect businesses to return to normal soon, and receive that governmental relief. So it probably comes at no surprise to the accountants on this call that we're seeing a big difference in the outcomes for small business owners who use an accountant versus those who don't.
Yeah, and when it does, come to advantage of taking advantage of these relief programs, the average small business in the Paycheck Protection Program has received more than $110,000, and more than half of small businesses have taken advantage of these, forgivable low-interest loans. But there are also a number of additional programs available, and many of them involve things like tax credits and tax referrals. See over on the right there, the various things in the CARES Act, which means that clients are gonna need your help with them too. So if they want to take advantage of things, like, yeah, they're really gonna gonna need your help to understand, like, okay, like what is a tax deferral for Social Security taxes? What does it mean? How long can I do it for? Like, there's a bunch of nitty gritty there that they're gonna count on you for.
Absolutely. And let's pause and see if there's any questions here in the chat. Oh, so Judith is kind of getting a jump on the PPP portion. So on the PPP loans, is it 8 weeks or 24 weeks, or can a client apply for forgiveness if using funds up in 10 weeks? So Judith, that was a big change with PPP. We've seen several iterations, I'll say, of that loan program from the SBA. So while you have up to 24 weeks, you can apply for forgiveness earlier than that time frame. So great question there. We also have Eloise asking, will the PowerPoint slide be forwarded to us? Yes, we will be sending an email out after this webinar today, but also take a look if you're able to access the handout section of the GoToWebinar control panel. Eloise, you and all the listeners today can actually access that right now if it helps at all. And so, Judith, I think you're, oh, go ahead,
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, I was gonna steal your thunder and say we're gonna talk about the PPP right now.
I know, I think that's great. I love that these questions are already on your mind. So yes, the PPP, or Paycheck Protection Program, it's a government program that I'm sure a lot of you have been working really closely with your clients on already. It's small businesses, they utilized it quite heavily. So let's walk through an overview of these loans and the forgiveness. And for those of you who don't already know or aren't aware, PPP, it expands the 7BA's existing 7A loan program to businesses affected by COVID-19. It's gone through several changes that I mentioned, but ultimately it's designed to fund up to 24 weeks of payroll expenses, plus other expenses like mortgage interest, rent, or utilities. Its aim is to give business owners an incentive to keep employees on the payroll.
And jumping in with a quick public service announcement, the final deadline to apply for a loan is June 30th, and I think we see that only, overall, like we saw 52% of the companies we surveyed had gotten a PPP loan. I think overall the number is slightly higher than that, but like there are folks who haven't done it yet. So so do it.
Yeah, time of this broadcast, that deadline is coming up soon, folks. And as to go over some of the changes that we've seen to the program overall, prior to June 5th of this year, the majority of loans given out through the PPP had a 2-year loan maturity. On June 5th, the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act, like you needed another acronym, PPPFA, was passed with new updates. So that loan maturity, it increased to 5 years, and borrowers with the existing loans do have the option to renegotiate their 2-year loan to the 5-year option. So I definitely think this is an opportunity. You can discuss this with your clients, see if that makes sense for them.
No, definitely. And some other changes have made it, more favorable for small businesses. So originally 75% of the loan amount had to go toward payroll expenses, and then the rest could go to things like rent and utilities, mortgage payments. But now only 60% of the covered expenses have to be payroll related, which gives small business owners a lot more flexibility in how they want to spend money.
Absolutely. And the timeline for full-time employee reductions or hourly and salary wage reductions that would potentially reduce forgiveness, that's also been pushed back from June 30th, 2020 to December 31st, 2020. So what this means for your clients is that borrowers have until December 31st of this year to meet the restoration test for full-time employees and salary wage reductions.
And the last big piece of good news is that small businesses are also given a lot more time to repay loans before the interest rates start kicking in. So I think they originally had 6 months, but these new changes give them up to 10 months based either on when their covered period ends or when they receive the loan. And do keep in mind that any loans which aren't forgiven, I think we'll get a little more into forgiveness here in a second, but any loans which aren't forgiven or aren't paid off within this time period are only subject to a 1% annual interest rate. So the PPP is a very affordable way to take on debt, if a small business is eligible and needs help.
Yep, and there are a few details to keep in mind when trying to determine whether your client's loan in particular will be forgiven or not. First one, and I know we've just covered this, but just to go over it, it bears repeating. The funds from a PPP loan must be spent within the 24-week cover period. The cover period, it can actually begin the date the loan was received, or employers can start calculating expenses using what's known as the alternate payroll covered period, which starts at the beginning of the first payroll cycle after the loan is received. The second point is that PPP loan borrowers do need to spend at least 60% of the loan amount on payroll cost, or they may only be eligible for partial forgiveness. That remaining 40% can only be spent on things like rent, mortgage interest, or utility bills. And just want to point out the SBA has clarified that there is no cliff. Forgiveness is calculated on a sliding scale if borrowers don't meet the thresholds. And then our third and last point, employers generally need to maintain their employee count and the amount of money they spend on payroll during the duration of the forgiveness period.
And it is, important to keep in mind that if a recipient doesn't meet these requirements, and they are subject to that sliding scale, that some will be forgiven, and it's only like the amount that's not forgiven that is subject to interest rate. So this really is a great deal for small business owners.
And we've also been hearing too a lot of questions about that full-time employee reduction or that full-time employee count. And you may be fielding this common one from your clients already. What if an employee refuses to return to work? So generally, if an employer has made a good faith effort to rehire a worker, they can exclude that employee as part of a reduction in full-time employee headcount. These are the standards, what you're seeing on the screen right now for what is considered a good faith effort. So take a look at it, but don't forget, you can refer to your handout for these as well. We're also sending them in an email after this webinar today. So as Elliott said, don't take notes, but kind of peruse at a glance. And really a huge takeaway that, Elliott, I feel like I always sound like a broken record when I say this, but just make sure your clients document, document, document.
No, I like it. It's the right thing to do, and gosh, I've run a small business, myself, and I I know if I don't get everything, when I hadn't gotten everything captured, it was always like the biggest pain later. And I know my accountant didn't always like me that much, which is why I'm in this line of work. But also want to call out that that we have a bunch more resources too. In addition to email, we'll send out. If you go to onpay.com/COVID-19, we have really comprehensive and frequently updated resources that answer questions about all these governmental programs, or provide really key links to things like the forgiveness application and things like that. So so feel free to visit us at onpay.com/COVID-19 if you want to dive a lot deeper into this stuff, or find your way a lot more quickly through the quagmire of governmental websites to the the links that really matter. With all that said, I think we're going to move on now. And do keep in mind that there are a lot of other governmental programs too, and that's a place you can be of a lot of help, and we have information about a lot of those in the COVID-19 Resource Center too. Now, with that said, let's move on to talk about how you can fulfill more of your clients' biggest needs. Definitely recommend, before talking about like drastically, different services that you could be doing, that you reach out to any clients about the PPP loan deadline and other loan programs they might not have taken advantage of. But let's dive in to look at at additional services on top of that.
Absolutely. Let's start by discussing the types of services clients are expecting from you. Some of these may be ones that you haven't discussed with them before. And honestly, as you can see from the list, they may be ones that are surprising to you as well. Business owners, though, in general, they're seeking services beyond just taxes from their accountants. These services, they range from more administrative tasks like payroll and bookkeeping to a more consultative approach in tax planning, projecting cash flow, even software recommendations.
Yeah, and I'm noticing now, actually, as we move on, that I think we didn't have bookkeeping in there explicitly. I think bookkeeping was way above 50% of folks expected it, so we just kind of had that included with more typical accounting services. But with that said, as you look at any of these services or any other services that you might add to your practice, like there are things that aren't on there, like CFO services and things like that. There are really three ways you can go about trying to add the service to your practice, depending on your skills, how much time you have to take on new duties, and of course how interested you are in taking on certain activities. I wouldn't recommend taking on a service that you feel like is pulling teeth. With that said, yeah, so here are the three ways you can look at it. I think the first is is to run it all yourself in its entirety, and some services you'd have to do that way. If you were being a CFO consultant, you can't really outsource that too much. And I think you're doing it all, and you're building a much stronger relationship with your client, and you're getting a lot more insights if you're running it. But it also requires the expertise to do the thing that you're doing, more manpower, and on the upside, you do reap all the benefit from it. You're doing the work, you're not paying someone else to do part of it. So that is kind of the most involved model. The middle ground is monitoring a service for for a given client, and that's you advise the client on it, you provide ongoing insight, you do get into the numbers and probably have access to whatever tools they're using and that kind of stuff, but you're asking the clients to do a lot of the work themselves, or third parties, or various providers or software to do some of the things. And if you're monitoring an activity, there's less revenue upside for you, but at the same time it might fit better with your capabilities or the amount of time you have, things like that. So a lot of accountants and bookkeepers say, hey, this is a good way to integrate something new into my practice, is to kind of take this middle road where I get visibility, and I make sure that everything is done right, but I don't actually have to do it all the time. And then the third way, and this is the lowest level of effort, is to refer it. You just help clients find an advisor or provider. They're going to get better care, and they're going to get a service that you've really vetted carefully. You'll build a lot of goodwill with them, but you might not necessarily see much revenue from that. The good news is you won't have to do a lot either. So that's kind of a third way you can help people out. And I know, like, talking about this in the abstract, it's a little hard to visualize. So we're going to jump in and take a look at payroll specifically as an example of this. We're using payroll here, and really could have done anything, but it's it's something we know really well. So I think it's valuable to kind of talk through it. and we can offer a lot more insight about it than other areas. But also, 38% of your clients outright expect their accountant to help with payroll, so it's probably something you should know at least a little about. And also, a lot of COVID relief programs involve payroll expenses and tax credits on some level, so it's going to be pretty relevant to clients right now, and hope it's a good example for you.
Yeah, so I'm a payroll nerd, love to talk about payroll, so let's get into it. A lot of payroll consists of administrative tasks. That's making sure that if you have hourly employees, that those hours are inputted, the employees are either sent their pay by direct deposit or check, taxes are calculated correctly, and the tax payments are also being made timely to the IRS and then the various state agencies. Then on top of all of that, filings need to be made timely as well. Most common are quarterly and annual filings. And then the payroll needs themselves can also change or be unique or specific to the company. So there's basic principles to payroll, but also depending on the state that your client's located in. So I want to call out, I saw someone's calling in from Ohio today. So hello, local taxes. That's a perfect example. Also the taxation structure for the business, even the benefits that your client offers their employees could make their payroll unique and add extra tasks. So if you're able to help your client with payroll in any capacity, you're really giving them back time. We conducted a survey that found that employers spend over 20 hours a month just on payroll alone. And then on top of that, if they do payroll incorrectly or miss a payment, miss a filing, they're going to get notices or penalties. You're really also saving them money and stress too. So after I've just gone through this laundry list of tasks, you're probably wondering, why should I add payroll services as part of my practice? Don't worry, it's going to be okay. It is a question I've gotten from accountants who are kind of dipping their toes into offering that service, so to speak. First, it's a natural extension or add on to your current services and expertise. A lot of the clients that I work with already are handling their clients' books and managing their cash flow. Payroll really gives you an oversight into the financial health and well being of that business and a better idea of their operations. And you're also able to anticipate or spot risks before they come up instead of having to put out fires after the fact. And as Elliott mentioned before, there's really not a wrong way to approach this. We see people add payroll services a multitude of ways. So let's go over three common approaches. Our first approach is refer. This has the least amount of involvement, and it's really an option for those who would rather not be responsible for running payroll on behalf of their clients. All you're doing is you're simply referring your clients to a payroll service provider that you recommend, but your clients are managing the ins and outs of payroll, like entering hours and approving a pay run. And what's nice with this option is you'll be sending your clients somewhere with reliable payroll calculations and filings, so they avoid notices, fines, and penalties. And that's why it's a good idea. I recommend, even if you're referring them out, still go through a quick demo of the service beforehand, see how user-friendly it'd be for your client. And in general, when you're looking at offering just a tech stack for payroll or accounting or what have you for your client, these are just some general tenets to keep in mind. Do a run through, do a demo.
On the flip side, and this is, it's kind of the same thing we called out, initially, but when you're referring something, there is less revenue for you because, someone else is getting paid to do most of the work. So there might be a small, referral fee or something like that, or a revenue share. But it's not going to be as big of an income stream as if you were doing all the work yourself. And also, you won't have the visibility to, anticipate those problems, or answer questions as readily as you might if you had a greater level of involvement. So if you did want to be more involved, the next option we walk through is that monitor option. So you're monitoring their payroll, but staying more or less hands-off or touch-free. You'll own the books, and things like monthly reconciliations are going to be a lot easier for you, but the data entry and pulling all the levers is actually going to be managed by the business owner. And depending on how you structure things with clients, you might be reviewing each pay run or taking a look at quarterly tax filings before they go out. Or you might just map payroll data into the general ledger, and get back to the business of accounting a little faster.
And there are definitely a few benefits through this approach. You have visibility into cash flow, so you can make sure the GL is right without getting involved in that day-to-day management. And it's still your client's ultimate responsibility to make sure that payroll is actually approved. This option, it's generally a higher revenue opportunity for you rather than just simply referring out.
And then the one downside is that clients are still in control of the payroll process, which leaves room for mistakes. And you might not get the same level of insight as if you were, running your payroll yourself and just seeing the kind of changes that happen, from pay cycle to pay cycle with your clients.
And then lastly, for our go-getters out there, our last approach is the most hands-on. You run payroll with full ownership of the process. You can still give your clients permission to run payroll, but everything passes through you. This is a really popular option, actually. A lot of the clients that come to me, they are utilizing this. It has a high potential for revenue, but you can hire staff to manage your client's payroll, or you can choose a payroll service provider as your partner. That'll help automate a lot of the processes.
Yeah, and if you go this way, you're going to get a lot more insight into your client's business because it's you really intimately involved with them all the time. You also have a lot more contact with your clients, and that was another big factor we saw with whether or not small business owners viewed their accountants as a trusted advisor is how frequently they talk to their accountant, and you're going to be just interacting with them more if you're doing this. Obviously, you have a lot more visibility into cash flow and business operations as well, and then there's a lot more revenue upside if you're doing more.
And I'd say that too, given the revenue potential for this option, the only con in this approach is that you are assuming a responsibility, the risk of running and approving payroll error-free. That's where a payroll service provider can really help, especially if they have a tax accuracy guarantee, they stand behind their calculations, and then hopefully that helps. You don't have to hire a payroll team on top of all of that.
Yeah, so that is, in a nutshell, what it would look like to offer a payroll service. And obviously, if you're looking to expand services, you have to do the research and, do some soul searching as well and decide, which services you're most comfortable with and which ones, you think your clients want. With that said, one thing to keep in mind is that our research has shown that clients generally do want more help from you in general. And I wanted to add one little tidbit there by sort of mashing up some of the different things we talked about before. Whether a client sees their accountant as a trusted advisor goes hand in hand with the range of services that are offered. When clients are satisfied with your range of services, over 80% call you a trusted advisor. So when they're satisfied, they're generally a lot happier and trust you more and just see you as that pillar of professional help. And if they don't see you as a trusted advisor, or if they don't, if they aren't satisfied, whether they or not they see you as a trusted advisor drops down to like 60%. So whether it's COVID programs or CFO services or accounts receivable or payroll, we think it's important to think long and hard about what else you might be able to do for clients, especially right now.
Absolutely. And Elliot, I do want to pause really briefly before we go into our next segment, as we do have a few questions. Sharon asked, when do they apply for forgiveness? So the covered period or the alternate cover period can't extend past December 31st, 2020. But we do have an article on PPP loan forgiveness in general, and the deadline for submitting a loan forgiveness application is October 31st, 2020. So business owners do have some time, which is kind of nice. So I would also recommend, though, in case that changes, I always like to say that because the PPP has changed so much. If you go to onpay.com/COVID-19, we have a PPP loan forgiveness article. And when we see any updates, if there are changes to the date that I just mentioned at the time of broadcast, that would be potentially a good resource to use. And then we have another question from Jean. Does your payroll service integrate with QuickBooks Desktop and Online? You are in luck, Jean, because we do integrate with both. QuickBooks Online, we have a direct integration. And then QuickBooks Desktop, we offer a direct integration with a third-party extension that Intuit recommends called AutoFi. Or you can be old school, that's okay too. You can also export an IIF file from OnPay and then import that into QuickBooks. And Joseph's kind of asking a question that toggles off of what I just said, so I'll expand that. Joseph asks, how does OnPay integrate with QuickBooks Online? So you log into OnPay and there's a spot to log into QuickBooks Online. If you have an accountant level user access, you can choose your client from a dropdown, and then you would map the chart of accounts just once. And what's nice is that you can be very granular. You're able to send over the wage expenses by department or by pay item. We have class tracking available, locations, and then you can choose specific accounts and map them to very specific taxes. So a lot of flexibility there. And then Gary also asked a great question about what we were just mentioning. How about Zero? Yes, we do integrate with Zero as well. And it's similar in that we offer, they call it, instead of class tracking, tracking categories. So we offer that, and then you can choose, hey, do I want those bills to come over in draft, approved and paid, just approved? And then you still get that same granular level of account mapping too. And then someone asked, Michael asked, how do we sign up to become an OnPay partner? I'm glad you asked that, Michael. If you go to onpay.com/accountants, we have an area where you can sign up for the partners program. This comes with a free partners dashboard, and it comes with a free test account. So there's no obligation. I encourage you. You can play around in that test account, get a feel for the system, add clients that way. You can also go to that same page and you can book a demo too. So that way you can talk one-on-one with myself or my manager, Caitlin. She's a CPA, which is pretty cool. So you'll be able to speak to someone from the partners team. And don't worry, we will stop for more questions. But before we do, we talked about how you can build these services into your practice. Let's talk about how you can market them to your clients. And I am really excited for this next part because Elliott is our resident marketing guru. So really, don't be afraid to ask questions at this juncture, folks. Ask away. No pressure, Elliott.
All right, well, I hope I can do okay here. No, this is like my passion, so I'm really excited to talk about this stuff. And I do think there's like a little bit of kind of marketing 101 that can go into this and just make things a lot easier for accountants and bookkeepers who who do want to add a service to their practice. So I think the first thing is to kind of think about it like a marketer would or a product person, but pick a few services that you might want to offer, and kind of think about what model it makes sense for you to adopt and how involved you want to be, how much time you have on to work with, whether you'd want to hire someone else, kind of think through some of those things. And a close part of that too is researching potential partners for things that you might outsource some or all of, or if there are tools you want to use. So kind of steps 1 and 2 here are to really get to really kind of get the big picture in place and start to think about like, all right, what it might look like if you were going to do some of these things. And once you've settled on that to some extent and have an idea in your head, you should introduce it to a few of your clients. And you can do this in a really casual way. I would consider this a form of market research, actually. But just at the end of a call or something like that, just casually run it by someone and say, hey, listen, like I just had been thinking about adding this kind of service. It seems like something that people would want, like, and this is how I was thinking about doing it. Like, does that sound like it makes sense? Like, is that something that you might be interested in? What would you recommend? How are you doing it now? How would someone like you like that? Do you think other businesses like yours might might be interested in something like that? And just kind of like really casually just run it by them and just say, yeah, I'm looking for some of your advice and I'd love to know how you think about it. There's a chance you might even end up making a sale in the process right there. But just before you take it to all your clients, like talk to a few who you do have a good relationship with, just to kind of get their opinion. I've also noticed that by asking 3 or 5 clients or folks who are in your target market for an opinion, you sort of get probably 90 or 95% of the insight you would if you did a big survey like we've been doing. So so that's a really good place to start. And a nice step to take. And then finally, once you have that input, revise your plan a little bit and decide exactly what you want to do.
And we'd recommend that you start by marketing these new services, as Elliot mentioned, to existing clients. It's a win for them too when you think about it because they can centralize their operations with one trusted advisor.
No, it's totally true, and they're already with you. Yeah, they already have a lot of faith in you, and there's also a very good chance that they want these services from you already. And so when you ask them about it, they're going to be like, yes, where have you been all my life? And so the question is, how do you do it? Because I think it can feel kind of awkward to go in and try and sell yourself or sell something new. And my approach would be just to make it, as kind of casual as possible, at least at first, and maybe not to make a big deal about it. So with existing clients, the first thing I would do is try and bring it up, with them, while you're talking about something else. So kind of like the way you might conduct the market research. If you are talking to a client, just having a regularly scheduled call with them or going over something at the end, say like, hey, by the way, how are you handling, if it was payroll right now? How is it going? Is it good? And they can talk about it, and they'll say it's great, we love our provider, or we don't, or man, we're making mistakes all the time. And then just gives you the opportunity to say, oh, okay, cool, I was just wondering, because we're talking about adding this service, and so it's something we could definitely help you with. We've got some great recommendations for it. Is that something we should talk more about? And it's just like a really casual, easy way to slip it in, and there's a good probability they'll just be like, great, yeah, let's do that. So that's number one, is just bring it up when you're talking to them anyway. Way number two to make the ask is to announce it. Just send an email letting clients know you're offering new services. Do that. You could send one email to all your clients, but sometimes that feels a little impersonal and forced. So if it doesn't feel like too much work, I'd recommend writing sort of an email template that explains what you're doing, but to write like an intro paragraph that's really personal. That's like, hey, how's it going? How are things at the dentist office? Hope things are going really well for you guys. Just wanted to let we've been getting clients asking about this, and we're now offering this service, if you need help with it. So to try and kind of make any announcement you do a warm one. We also have, there's a link here, and we'll send this out, but some kind of pre-written templates you could use for that kind of stuff, or at least to get you started. Obviously, you want to do it in your own voice, and say personalize things to your clients, but announcing it is a really good step. And then the last step is to ask annually. So, you probably should either, like coming up on tax time, you probably have like a questionnaire that you send out, or, it's probably a good idea to have some kind of annual meeting after tax time to just say, how'd it go? What could we be doing better? And in one of those two times, it's probably a really good idea to just say like, hey, do you want help with payroll? uh, and it's just like a really easy chance for someone to opt in. And that's also a time when a lot of small business owners are reconsidering how they do things, and they're reliving various pain points and stuff. So it's a good time for them to be like, oh my gosh, please, yes, never again, take this off my hands
Oh,
for me. Oh,
oh,
but
sorry
no,
about
thank
that. A
you.
little technical
Thanks again.
difficulty. Yep, there we go. Right, ready for the next slide?
Yeah, let's do it.
There you go. All good points. Yeah, definitely annual or even quarterly when they've gone through the headache of managing some things on their own without you. And I'd also recommend make sure it's added on your website. This is how you'll be able to let new and prospective clients know about these services. I can't tell you how many calls I've been on where I'm speaking with an accounting firm and the services that they offer aren't spelled out clearly on the firm's website. So if it's a new client, I'm looking for services. I have a few in mind. If I don't see that spelled out clearly on the website, I could potentially go to another firm's website, check it out there instead of asking you if that's something that you offer.
No, totally. And I think that's basically like the first point here of setting the right expectation that that yeah, like you have it on your website. If you have a Yelp profile, if you have a brochure that you send out, just any of the sort of the materials where you explain what you do, include that in there. And it just has it, like, people will choose you because of it, first of all, but second of all, it has them coming in thinking about that as something they'll ask about. It just kind of makes it part of the discussion from the beginning. And the second thing, and this is my favorite, is do you want fries with that? When you are onboarding a new client, like, just have a list of the services you could be providing. Because they probably come in saying like, oh yeah, we need help with bookkeeping, or with, or just someone to do our taxes at the end of the year, or whatever it happens to be. But if you come in and say like, hey, like we offer more, nuanced, services for understanding and managing your cash flow, or we offer payroll, or whatever it happens to be, just asking them about it as like kind of a checklist you work down in the onboarding process gives them the, they just chose you, they're excited to move to you, you're about to solve a million problems for them, and there's a good chance they'll be like, oh, you'll do that too, thank goodness, so yes, please sign me up. So that's a really great place to add on, more to get someone to buy into more services is just when you're first onboarding them.
Yep. And then
Um,
those are really the key. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
oh no, it's okay. Yeah, go ahead, Garrett.
Oh, no, no. I was going to say, yeah, you're getting a better sense of what clients want in the first place. We are going to stick around for a few minutes to answer questions. So please use that questions box to add anything you'd like us to follow up on. But I did want to say too, if you're looking to add payroll to your practice, you're seeking a partner to help you out, we'd be happy to give you more information. You can call us at the number there Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern, or email us at partners@onpay.com. Or better yet, as we were talking about before, book a time onpay.com/accountants. All of our representatives are based in Atlanta, Georgia, like myself, and they're all certified through the American Payroll Association. So if you're completely new to payroll or whether you already have that background, we're knowledgeable. We'd like to talk with you. And I know we've covered a whole lot, so please refer to that handout for the links we've shared. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We'll see you next time. Have a great one. And then if you'd like to stick around, we'll open it up for a few questions. So our first one is from Joseph. Joseph asked, what is your turnaround time? So Joseph, I'll address that two parts. One, if you're looking for a turnaround time for what does it take to onboard a new client, I generally advise 3 to 5 business days from start to finish. That gives us extra time if they have prior wages already for our onboarding team to migrate over the employees and prior wage data. And it's completely free of charge, but if they have more complicated payroll or questions that we might have to ask, or you have to dig to find those reports, but they're able to help for free. So just let them know. If your turnaround time question was in regards to direct deposit, that can vary by the account. Each new client that enrolls with us, they're sent an email. So if you're the one initiating that enrollment for your client, you would be sent that email. And that email is going to ask a few risk assessment questions. Generally, a lot of our clients are on a 2 business day turnaround for a direct deposit. But right now, due to COVID-19, due to an increase in fraudulent activity and bounce drafts that we're seeing, which makes sense given the economic climate at the moment, by default, our financial operations team is putting most new clients on a 4 business day turnaround time. But I will say what's nice about being a partner is that they're also looking at that. So if your client absolutely needs a 2 business day turnaround time, just let them know. They're happy to accommodate and look into that for you, because it kind of helps mitigate that risk if they're working with someone to manage their cash flow. So great question there. And Gary, I think that answered your question about direct deposit too. Jean's asking, can you handle multiple Ohio local city withholdings? We can for multiple different employees, but Jean, just truthfully, within the system, when you're configuring or assigning an employee to a location, you can only assign them to one location for taxation purposes at any given time. So if they worked in one locality versus another locality in the same pay period, and it is the same employee, then you would have to process a second payroll to capture that second locality's taxes. But we can certainly handle if multiple employees are spread across multiple locations. I think, Jean, what that question's kind of aiming for a little bit is kind of some job costing there too. And it's on our roadmap, but it's just not available in the system yet. So just want to be transparent about that. Any other questions too about payroll, about marketing? I'm your gal for payroll. Elliott's your guy for marketing. So let us know any outstanding questions that we can answer for the moment. I'm just going to give it a few seconds. No pressure if someone's trying to type it out. I don't want to rush them. Right. Well, Elliott, I don't see any final questions. If you do have more, though, please give our client experience team a call. Check us out at onpay.com. But in the meantime, have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.